Last video, I showed you the metrics that actually matter in cold emailing. So I'm going to show you 5 examples that actually hit those numbers, right? Where they get about 5 to 10% reply rates, where some of them actually also hit 15%. So I'm going to show you the exact copy, the subject lines, and why each one actually works here. So I'm just going to quickly zoom out. I've got 5 email examples, different industries with real reply rates that you could typically see. And this is the exact structure that you can use as well for your own cold email process, right? And at the end, I want you to comment what these all have in common, because there's something that you kind of notice as you go through these things. But let's see if you can spot that pattern. And of course, subscribe if you want to learn more about cold email, outbound, inbound, whatever it might be. But yeah, let's go to the first one. This one is going to be an example for SaaS founders who just raised money. Now, you'll see from the subject line, hey, 4 months ago, right now you're probably hiring AEs, but don't have enough pipeline to feed them. We run cold email for SaaS companies, 3 to 6 months post-raise, blah, 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 right? One client, Series A, hired 3 AEs, went from 6 demos a month to 24 in 8 weeks. If you're at that, how do I feed the sales team stage? Is that where, 15-minute sales call would be worth it for you, right? But I want to kind of break down why this works. First is a specific timeline, right? 4 months post-raise. If that's them, then they're open. And if you're able to build your lead list very specifically and use something like Clay, for example, to understand how long it's been since they got a raise for their company, that's a data point that you can use to really specifically hit on their pain point, right? The hook calls out their exact problem, right? That they're hiring AEs, but there's no pipeline. The next is the offer. It's very, very concrete. 20 to 30 qualified sales calls. Social proof is incredibly tight because we're mentioning Series A, 3 AEs, 6 to 24 demos. And the call to action is incredibly easy, right? Is this worth 15 minutes? If they're in this situation with all this pain and 15 minutes is able to solve this problem, not entirely, but at least get started in solving that problem, most definitely worth it, right? The reply rate for something like this, I'd expect 10 to 14%, and even higher, especially if you can be super specific about your timeline and if you have enough research on their company to know their specific timeline, right? Now, I want to kind of mention something that you could potentially do to absolutely kill this, in a bad way, by the way, is generic subject lines like grow your pipeline, right? Of course, everyone wants to grow your pipeline, but the more broad you go, the less you're actually calling them out, right? For example, the complete opposite example of that is calling them by their name. If I say, hey, if your name is John, and I call you, hey, John, no one else is going to respond except yourself, right? But if I'm saying, hey, people, or like, hey, everyone, nobody's gonna even really look or respond verbally to something like that. Another thing is vague offers, like saying like, oh, I'll help you scale. It doesn't really mean anything. Again, if it's too vague, it's not really gonna land with them. So we gotta be concrete with our numbers and specific about what we're trying to do here, okay? Example number 2 is gonna be e-commerce brands doing about 2 million plus a year. Subject line, you can kind of read through this real quick. I'm gonna speed run through this as well. Your 3PL is costing you 40% more than it should. It starts off with something pretty curious, right? Let's say his name is John again. You're doing $200,000 a month and using 3PL that charges $8 to $12 per order. That's $20,000 to $30,000 per month in fulfillment costs. We connect DTC brands with better 3PLs, same service, $4 to $6 per order, cuts your costs in half. Now, one brand, we give a quick example, blah, 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 but if you're paying too much for fulfillment, worth a quick call, right? And then you'll just put your email signature there. But I'm gonna quickly break this down. This works because we're calling a specific pain with a number. 40% more immediate interest based off of that. That's a pretty significant change in terms of their overall cost savings. Going from $8 to $12 per order to $4 to $6. That's literally cutting it in half. And then there's also the hook, right? We're using exact numbers, $200,000 plus months, $8 to $12 per order. It shows that you did your research, right? The offer is also incredibly simple, right? I kind of missed it right here, but basically, the better 3PL that they can find, it cuts the cost in half for them. And so it's really specific and also simple. Hey, we're gonna save you money, but also by half. CTA, very low pressure, worth a quick call, very similar as to what we did before. Now you could actually add some twist to something like this, where you could talk about, hey, do you mind if I quickly share with you like a video where I walk through how we did this for XYZ business, right? Then we could show, a similar business that you guys might have worked with to show exactly what you did with them so that, we could show some social proof, right? Another one kind of similar to the previous email that I'm going to talk about is things that could actually destroy this email. Again, generic stuff. If you're saying stuff like save money on fulfillment, then it's just super like, I don't know how to say it. It's like very like greasy in the sense of like you could just tell it's like a sales thing, right? Compared to this one, your 3PL is costing you 40% more than it should. Yes, obviously it's a sales thing, but the better thing about this is like you're genuinely curious, especially if you're this type of prospect, because you have the pain of like, oh my gosh, I'm spending so much money on 3PL. And then no specific numbers. That's another thing that can kill this. If you say we can save you money, but then not really a specific amount of the amount of money that you're going to save them, especially without proof, it's hard to believe you. Because why? This is cold email. They don't even know who you are, right? They barely even know what your name is. So that's basically what we do for e-commerce. Another one for marketing agency founders is, let's assume that this company, it has 10 to 15 people in their marketing agency. Subject line, you can kind of go through this by yourself. You can pause the video, whatever. But quickly want to break this down. The subject line right away hits the exact pain, right? If they're turning down clients, they're going to open this immediately because why? They're going to try to get more people on board so that they can serve them and most importantly, make more money. The hook is incredibly surgical. I use that specifically because when we say, hey, 8 people delivering, but you're doing sales calls, that's their reality, right? The more accurate you can be about the hook or whatever you're saying, the more, I guess, personalized it is, and they're going to pay more attention, right? That's just logical. The offer is super concrete. The CTA gives them an out, right? If you're turning down revenue, then it makes them self-qualify themselves, right? When I'm asking them, hey, if you're turning down revenue, of course they would reply. It's not like, hey, are you interested in working with us? Then is it worth 15 minutes? Like it adds a little more friction, right? So we want to call them out, make sure that it gives them an easy way to say yes, and a way of doing that is pointing out a pain point that you guys can use when trying to quote unquote self-qualify them. With something like this, reply rate could be like 13, 16%, maybe even higher. Again, it depends on how specific you can get about their problems, as well as good timing, right? And honestly, the timing stuff, it could be luck. Depends on how much research you could potentially do. But that should be the reply rate that you could probably expect here. Again, opening with something like, I noticed your agency doing blah, blah, blah. Like the fake flattery stuff is really not, they don't care, right? They really don't care. This glazing stuff that we're doing for cold email, like is ridiculous. It's not even useful because one, it's talking about them, but it has nothing to do with their problem, right? Because we want to solve problems. We're not here to just give them flowers for no reason, right? Most of the time, the reason why we say, hey, you're doing amazing stuff is for the sake of rapport, but like we're cold email anyways. They know that they don't know you. They know that you don't know them, right? Template number 4 here that I want to go through is a little different, but this is for enterprise procurement and operations. Overall, you guys are probably seeing an overall theme, right? We want to use very specific facts about them, making sure that the offer is specific and the CTA is very consultative, if that makes sense, right? Because you're not trying to say, hey, buy my stuff. You're saying, hey, this is the issue that you probably have right now. Is this worth solving for you? And 9 times out of 10, they are probably in the right headspace where they say, okay, this is something that we actually need to solve, right? For this one, the good thing about this is that, well, the hook uses facts, right? 40 plus vendors per quarter, 6 weeks, 12 plus emails. This is real research done on their field to show that you're actually, an expert in this field and you actually have some sort of experience and credibility. Second is the offer is incredibly specific. We cut onboarding from 6 weeks to 2 weeks. If we can cut their onboarding by 3x, that's going to save them so much time and actually can onboard 3 times more amount of people, right? Another thing is social proof. One enterprise client, by you mentioning one enterprise client, it shows that you work at their scale, right? And us saying not pitching anything removes the pressure on their end, right? One thing I want to talk about is if you open up with something like, I hope this email finds you well. The issue with that is like nobody talks like that, right? Unless you already know them, then what is the point, right? Another thing is talking about your AI-powered platform. That's not really the point of this. What they are looking for is not really the inputs, but the outputs. What is the result that they can get by working with you, right? What is the overall outcome that they can expect if they work with you, right? Because they're not going to care about whatever the hell you're going to do to get the answer or the result. They just want the result, right? For example, if I'm working with a team and they, for some reason, use AI for 90% of the work, but their work is incredible, I don't even give a crap that they're using AI, right? Do more of that, because whatever output I'm getting from that is amazing, so do more of that. So they're not really going to care whatever it is you do, just get the job done, right? Just get the job done. Now, the last one here, really quickly, this is for a pretty crowded space, to be honest with you. but this is for fractional CMOs or CFOs as well, or consultants trying to get clients in their calendar consistently. So you can read this over, but just go straight into the breakdown. The subject line hits the exact frustration, right? Getting ghosted after proposals, because you could expect these people, they're very like technical in the sense of like they know their craft, they're experts in their field, but they're not like salespeople, right? That's the biggest issue that they run into. So they feel like they did a great job, they send the proposal over, and then they just hear nothing. That is their frustration, and we're pinpointing that exactly in the subject line. The hook is also specific, right? 5 to 6 proposals per month, but half of them ghost you, right? And that's the reality. The offer is also incredibly clear. The social proof is also relatable. We're talking about this fractional CMO that we work with getting from 2 to 12 calls while they close 3. And then the CTA filters for people who are actually serious, right? Tired of tire kickers, right? They're going to then self-qualify, because if they are sick of tire kickers, they know exactly what we are feeling, what we might be thinking when we're reaching out to them, because they might also just kick the tire, but they don't want to be that type of person because they've already dealt with them. They're sick of it, right? And so they want to say, yeah, oh my gosh, I'm done with these type of people, right? Reply rate for something like this, 14 to 17%, could differ depending on what they feel like, what they believe about cold email, because especially for something like CMOs or CFOs, fractional CFOs, most of them is done through referral. And so they don't really believe in cold email too much. It kind of depends on the person, right? But something that you could do to absolutely destroy this is not mentioning any of their pain. If you can't call out the ghosting or the tire kickers, they're not really going to care, okay? Now, to wrap this up kind of at the end here, the pattern you should have spotted is the subject lines are calling out specific situations and not just overall generic, like, bullshit, right? The hook uses their real numbers, and it shows that you did research, because this is cold email. People know that you could just spam out 100,000 emails just like that. But we want to show that we went beyond just the generic, like, hey, do you want more sales calls? Or, hey, are you struggling with this problem? They want to know specific numbers to show that you know what you're talking about and that you actually spent the time to do something. Because if someone let's say they spent 12 hours to prepare a document for me, it's so much harder for me to just ignore that because, well, I feel like I'm in debt. This person spent 12 hours creating this thing, and I'm not going to respond at all, right? At least that prompts a response, right? And so that helps us improve our reply rates. And the higher the reply rate, the better the overall positive reply rate will be, because it's relative to the reply rate. And the CTA makes it super easy to say yes. Me personally, I really like the CTA for the fractional CMOs, as well as this one right here, if you're turning down revenue. All these are honestly good, right? But my favorite ones are going to be this one as well as this one, right? Because it's so specific to them. They're already sick of that situation that they're in. They want to make sure that they get out of it. And so they're saying, okay, fine, let's do this, right? Now, if you want campaigns like this for your company, ones that actually hit 10 to 15% replies and book 15 to 25 calls per month, you can check the link below. We write all these and run these for B2B companies so that you can focus more on running your business, because that's basically your expertise. So you can copy them, test them, whatever you might want to do, and then track reply rate and positive reply rates, because that's what actually matters. So if you haven't watched the previous video where I break down the metrics that actually matter, check it out right here in the top left of your screen, and I'll see you in the next one.